Hello. In this tutorial, we will learn the texturing software Substance Painter from scratch. We will take our prop and go through all the stages, from the first click in the interface to exporting the ready-made maps for the game engine. You will learn how layers work, what masks are, how generators differ from filters, and how ready-made presets save days of work. You are on the Video Smile channel. Let's go learn Substance Painter. First of all, upon launching the program, we create a project either by pressing Ctrl+N or going to File, Arrow, New. Select the PBR-Metallic Roughness Alpha Blend template. We choose this because we have a classic PBR pipeline where we want to create realistic textures with reflections, heights, and so on. And the Alpha Blend suffix indicates that the pipeline will include working with transparency, in our case, with glass. Load our model. The resolution doesn't matter. We can change it at any time in the settings. But regarding the normal map, I'll explain in a bit more detail. There are two types of normal maps, OpenGL and DirectX. How do they differ? By the inversion of the green channel in RGB. Essentially, they can be converted into each other without the slightest difficulty. However, different engines and programs use different formats. Unreal uses DirectX, Unity uses OpenGL. It's the same in the software. By default, Maya, Blender, and Marmoset use OpenGL, while 3ds Max, for example, uses DirectX. As Blender fans, we choose OpenGL. That's it. You don't need to click anything else. Let's create the project. Our model is loading, and to navigate in the viewport, we need to hold Alt plus left mouse button to rotate, Alt plus right mouse button to zoom, Alt plus middle mouse button to pan. If we lose our model, press F and it will return to the center of our viewport. The other menus are also not too complicated. Assets and all libraries, these are all our resources that exist in Painter by default. These are materials, smart masks, filters, brushes, various alphas, grunges, environment maps, and fonts. Even that is available recently. The other menus, this is Properties Paint. Here we deal with the properties of each layer individually. Texture Set List. We switch between different texture sets. Right now we have one texture set, so this isn't particularly relevant to us. Layers. Here is where all the magic happens. Layers, generators, masks, it all goes here. Texture Set Settings. Here, basically the textures are imported after baking, which the generators then work with. Let's load them here as well. Drag and drop them into the Asset Browser, into our library. Select All, Import as Texture. Load them into the project. We can load them into the current session, into the project, or into the library forever. The first and the third options are not always relevant, especially the third, so we load them into the project. A brief historical background. Where do we get these bake maps from? There is a high poly model with high detail and a low poly model with optimization. As the names imply, one is a high poly and the other is a low poly mesh. The essence of the main working pipeline for game dev is to project high detail onto the low poly. The tool used for this process is UV mapping, where we unwrap a 3D object onto a 2D plane. And onto this very UV we project, that is, bake our detail. A couple of steps and clicks, and we get the result. For all the details, bevels, indents, and extrusions, the normal maps are responsible. For where the generators will work in the crevices, often dirt areas, this is Ambient Occlusion, or AO. Along the edges and sharp areas, where there will be various chips and scuffs, Curvature. Position, for understanding where the top of the model is and where the bottom is. Thickness, to adjust the ability for light to pass through the object. It is actually used extremely rarely. Material ID, so that smart materials can be applied to specific selected zones, which are assigned to different high poly objects. We can bake in Marmoset or Painter, as well as in practically any native 3D software. And we drag the textures into the required slots. Ambient Occlusion to AO, Curve to Curvature, ID Map to ID Map, Normal to Normal. Normal object into World Space Normal, Position to Position, Thickness to Thickness. Everything is wonderful. It has loaded. Look, the information has appeared. It wasn't there before. And now it is. Wonderful. We can delete what is not needed right now and move on. Let's briefly run through the tools we need. Let's create a regular layer with the ability to paint. Choose a red color for contrast, a higher height, a certain glossiness, and let it also be metallic. Oh, what a beauty! Right now, we are painting this using our standard brush. If needed, we can replace the brush with a double click. With the eraser, we can erase all this. Using the Path tool, we can create all this as ornaments and lines, or run everything along a curve, a Bezier curve. With this tool, Polygon Fill, we can frame and place any stickers in a specific way, and we can depict it exactly as we need. Next, if we have a fill layer with a specifically set color, let's make it some kind of blue. The next tool, Polygon Fill, will help us select either a polygon along which we fill, or an object, or a UV island, meaning it only paints within the bounds of a UV seam. I want to say right away, the most important thing when working on textures is understanding how the logic of 0 and 1 works. 0 is an absolute zero value, including black. It is the absence of anything at all. That is, there is absolutely nothing. 1 is the full maximum value, which is also white. If you see values 0 to 1 or black and white, then keep this slider in mind. 0 can essentially also erase everything, because it is the absence of anything. 1 paints and performs its function. This will work on all subsequent elements as well. For example, if our tool has metallic, then metallic at 1 will be completely white in the map display. If we have no metallic at a 0 value, the color will also be black. It's important to understand this. This works with height, roughness, and even with opacity. The subsequent tools, unlike in Photoshop, are practically not used. These are the smudge tool and the clone tool, to clone from one piece to another place. I believe in Photoshop this is called the history brush, and the color picker tool. Everything below the fill tool is practically not used and won't be useful to us. Now we need to set up the scene. We can return back to the material display or use the M button on the keyboard. With Shift and the right mouse button, we rotate our light. Let's set up the scene to work with it. First of all, in Display Settings under the Environment map, let's set the Tomoko map. This is the most neutral map among those available in Substance Painter. It provides a maximally neutral environment and lighting, helping you understand how clean or dirty the color will eventually be. Also, we will turn up Environment Opacity and Environment Blur. Now we have a pretty pleasant, light background, and we don't want to keep adding more light. Wonderful. The project is set up. We can move forward. In the context of understanding how 3D works, it's also important to clarify that there are modes for switching between the UV layout and the 3D model in the program. F4 allows you to switch between the 2D view and 3D view. F1 displays both views simultaneously. F2 only 3D. F3 only 2D. Well, F2 and F3 seem unnecessary to me when you have F4. F5 is perspective, we already have it. F6, orthographic. Let's return to perspective. And now, let's look at the two most important context menus. Those are Properties, Paint, and Layers. In combination, they are incredibly cool because in layers we add the layers we need, materials, and create something legendary. By the way, spoiler, regular layers, where we paint manually, we practically do not use. We always work with fill layers. We go to the settings of our material, which are displayed in the second interconnected menu, Properties Fill. We can choose the color, set a specific height, determine whether it will be absolutely matte or glossy, whether it will have metallic, or if it's just paint without any metallic admixture at all, whether it is transparent or not. In short, this is the entire point of PBR. It's the ability to work with the properties of each material aimed at realism. Let's find a ready-made smart material to examine this in practice. Switch to Smart Materials, drag over, say, aluminum. Let's see how it applies. Quite nice. We can delete the layer below. Open the folder, which contains only two layers, two fill layers. The first fill layer is the metal itself. We can toggle its visibility on and off. A certain filter is applied to it. Next come various irregularities, scratches, and levels, with which the necessary amount is adjusted. Transparency and opacity are determined, among other things, by the slider in the Layers menu. Blending modes can also vary. It is not particularly visible on the base color right now because everything happening here was done on the roughness channel. By pressing C in the viewport, we can switch between these channels. Roughness. Here's what is happening. Therefore, opacity/transparency and blending modes play out 100% here. Even though the material seems quite simple, just two fill layers, there are practically none of those huge, tedious node chains. All this is summarized into one folder. It is also created quite easily. A folder is created and the necessary layers are dragged and dropped into it. On top of the folder, a black mask is often created, using it in combination with the tool we have already learned, Polygon Fill. So that a specific material applies over specific geometry, not over the entire fire extinguisher, but only where it's needed. For example, the handle. Essentially, the mask controls visibility. To see where our mask is located, Alt plus click on the mask. White is where our mask is active. Black is invisibility for our mask. Initially, we used a black mask to make everything invisible and subsequently painted with white, that is, made visible the material where we needed it. You can create generators on top of the mask, and that is the best part. Add arrow generator. And let it work based on curvature. And now our mask has allowed the material to work only on specific areas. Curvature means working along the edges. Look closely. We have now created the effect that the paint has worn off and the metal is showing through. We can adjust the required amount using the sliders and balance. Let's create another fill layer. Make it a dark color here. The roughness will be higher. Let's make it a matte material, and metallic 0. We don't need to work with heights, transparency, emission, and normals. Let's name it Dirt. A black mask on top to exclude everything. On top of that, a generator. And now, instead of curvature, ambient occlusion. Now we need to invert it. and notice that dark areas are added in those places, thanks to the bake maps, where there are crevices and potential dirt. And using a combination of curvature plus ambient occlusion, the overall sense of volume on the 3D model is built. Whatever style is followed, stylization, realism, hyperrealism, semi-realism, it doesn't matter. In all cases, curvature and AO are the necessary foundation upon which everything is built. All further generators that can be worked with, again, function based on the original maps, AO and curvature. There is a huge number of these generators. Sometimes it's a combination, simultaneously using AO and curvature, sometimes leaning more towards one of these options, but the essence doesn't change. On top of the generators, let's look at the option of adding filters. They are added just like generators using the magic wand icon, Add Filter. And now, let's say I want everything to become more blurred. For this, we have the blur filter. Or, on the contrary, I want everything to tighten up and become more contrasty. Let's see what can help us with this. For this, we have the wonderful Sharpen filter. It makes it all more contrasty and pronounced. And what you want to do, blur or make it more contrasty, the choice is yours. Using analogous principles of Painter's workflow, the metal material was created. I added it to my Smart Materials once and now dragged it onto our model. If anything, you can replace it with any other Painter metal, create your own, or download this one from the attached project files via the link in the description. Everything here is what we discussed earlier. Sharpen to increase contrast. Dust adds a little dust. A bit of sand, as a separate material, also masked. But look at the number of sublayers in the mask. Let's take a look. What is happening here? The number of layers is, of course, depressing, because learning to work with masks and sublayers for these masks is one of the main tasks when working on a material in Substance Painter. If you know how to work with sublayers, blending modes, opacity, and other features, consider that you have mastered the program. Editing the material, various dots, scratches, working with curvature along the edges, as we mentioned earlier. The logic overall is completely the same. Let's take a material that is in Painter and throw it on top. Let's say steel painted. Let's open it. There are very few layers here, and they can be adjusted according to our requirements. For example, I would make the paint glossiness higher. The rust is already at good values. Sharpen, contrast enhancer, is also at a decent value. Let's assign a black mask and paint the area where we want to see this color scheme. Pretty much what we end up with. This is a standard metal material, which you can easily find, even within Painter's own smart materials. Now let's paint what we still have remaining white. This particular part here is rubber. We're going to transfer this element into its own separate layers. I believe we can now proceed to switch our attention to the base color. And we'll also apply a black mask. We will assign it to a very We will do the same with our metal material, plastic, and then we will apply the decals. Well, we adjusted the placement of the metal, where it should be, added plastic, added glass. All of this is available in the built-in materials of Substance Painter. And now we are missing literally one thing, decals. Let's add them to our project. The decals, as well as the model itself and the bake maps for the model, will be attached in the link in the description under the video. We also select that this is a texture. Import into this project. Our 3 decals, and let's place them. Let's show on the example of one detail how this placement will work. I drag and drop onto the base color, switch to the contrast mode, 2D/3D. I disable the repeat of our decal and squash it to the needed ratio. I rotate it 90 degrees along our UV and place it roughly where it is supposed to be. And it will be located somewhere here. Let's move it a bit lower. I do the same with the remaining decals, dedicating a separate fill layer to each individual image. As a final touch, let's add one more fill layer, a mask on top of it, a generator, and plug dirt in here. Dirt will automatically be applied over everything. Let's adjust the level so it's not overkill. And we'll group all our efforts into a folder. We will turn this folder into a separate smart material. Right-click arrow, create smart material. And now a separate smart material named our material, let's find it. It's in the asset browser. Wonderful. We are left with just one thing, export our textures. To do this, go to File, Arrow, Export Textures. PBR is already selected. Export in any convenient format, most often either PNG or Targa. Select the bit depth, default is 8-bit. Texture set size, 2K, 4K, at your discretion. Which maps will be exported? Turn off emissive because we don't have this map here. We didn't add any emission. Choose the export path and press the button itself, Export. Loading is in progress. This doesn't happen instantly. Over some time, the textures must process and ultimately output all the maps we worked on. It exported and lit up green. We can save the export settings, Save Settings. Tweak something, re-export, and enjoy our textures again. I hope this video was useful to you. For now, good luck to everyone and see you next time.